we have all right, so I'm just going to go ahead and get into screen share. I have the question and answer app enabled, supposedly. Still on a learning curve with this. And I also have the chat bar open, which is the little blue bubble in the flyout window to your left. So it looks like I have 2 of you so far. So what I'm going to be focusing on today, unless anybody has any special questions that they need answered or a project that they're working on, is I'm going to be going over sleeve details. So I'm going to go straight into screen share, and this is recording this time, so whatever anybody misses, they can go back to YouTube and watch it. So I'm going to do screen share for now, and I'm using Patternmaster version 5 today in the pattern editor. And I'm doing the whole screen today so that you can see the pop-up windows for when I select certain things like the locate points and other good things like that. Now, if you are viewing in high definition, the items from the drop-down menu, such as File, make sure I'm presenting here to everyone. So drop-downs in File are going to appear much cleaner and clearer if you're viewing in high definition. You can go to the little gear icon when you're viewing or replaying this recording to bump up your resolution for what you're watching. So what I have here, there's no seam allowances. We have the front bodice, we have a back bodice, we have a basic sleeve, and the front and back neck facing. And this was generated in the style editor. The sleeve is fitted with about 3/8 inch ease in the cap, and we have about 1.5 inch ease in the chest, 3/4 of an inch in the waist, and 1.5 inches in the hips. And that doesn't really matter, except for just to be aware of what your settings are when you're working with a particular pattern. So I'm going to go ahead and for now get rid of my facings because I don't need those. I just dragged a box around them, and I'm going to hit delete. And I often hit Control Save on a regular basis so that I don't lose my work. And I always retain my original patterns, and I copy and paste. So what I'm going to do now, mostly I'm going to be working with the front and the sleeve. So I just dragged a box around the front, and I'm going to hit Shift and also drag a box around my sleeve so that my front and my sleeve are both highlighted. And now I'm going to copy those. And that would be Copy Objects, or shortcut CO. I'm going to click on that, and I want 1 copy of these. And now we'll zoom in on these closer. Now, before I get into the sleeve, I do want to do a little bit with showing you on how to make sure that the side seam for the dart is trued up. And right now the front is grouped together, and I know it's grouped together because when I click on it, the entire thing highlights. So what I'm going to do is do Group Explode, and that's this little button here, or you can hit Control U. So now you see all of my construction points, the little X's are highlighted. I'm going to get rid of some of this verbiage so it's not distracting. And in order to take a look at how my dart is truing up, I'm going to remove the center line. I'm highlighting these and hitting the delete button. And see my bust point right here. That's signified by the little circle with the X. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag my bust point right to that point right there. And I'm going to do the same for my front dart. Now, just to show you where the dart is ending before the bust point, I'm going to measure. So that's the MS key for measure, MS. And you can always see what I'm doing if you look in the upper left-hand side here on the text bar here. That gives you what the current activity is. So I'm going to snap to a point to measure from. Remember, snap is your right click, and left click is to start or stop a position anywhere on the screen that you want. So right click, which is also snap, will grab the nearest construction point. So I'm going to right click here to the bust point, and I'm going to right click, to the end of the bust dart. I'm going to right click to the bust point right there. Now that's exactly 1 inch. Now in actuality, 1 inch is a little too close to the bust point for me. That could end up being a pointy dart. So if you think about the bust point, and I'm going to hit escape here. If you think about the bust point and the radius of the bust point, for a modest B cup, you might have 3 to 3.5 inches here around the bust point. So usually you want to back off the end of a dart a little more before you get to the bust point than this little 1 inch that they have here by default. So for me, that would be about 2 to 2.5 inches on the minimum. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to close this dart. See how my side seam trues up. Then I'm going to bring it back open, and then I'm going to move my dart point 2.5 inches away from the actual apex of the bust, because I think that's a little too close for me. So to get started, I'm going to move the point, move this dart leg here to the actual bust point. And I'm going to use my MP command, which is move point. Oops, I don't know if I got that. MP. And I'm going to click on the object containing the point to be moved. That can seem a little confusing. Really, all that needs to happen is we right-click to the nearest construction point, and see how it rubber bands and it's staying stuck here to my cursor. Now I'm going to right-click again to the bust point. So move point is just simply grab a construction point and attach it to whatever new location that you want. If you use a left click, you can move that point anywhere that you want. Now, just for fun, I'm going to click on each of these legs just to do a little geeky information gathering. If I click on this leg, it's 6.977. If I click on this leg, it's also 6.977. So that's the good news, that they are both equal. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to snap a point right in the middle of the shoulder here. So let me zoom in that. And that is S as in Sam and the number 2. Actually, in this, it might be SM for snap midpoint. Let's give that a try. SM, click anywhere on the target line or arc. That didn't work for me. Let me try S2 and see if that's available. I think I like S2, S as in Sam, 2, the number 2 here, better than snap midpoint. SM has never worked out for me. So snap in between 2 points. Snap we know is right click, and right click. So that gave me a little construction point right here in the middle. If anybody has better luck than I have in the past with SM, S as in Sam, M as in Mary for snap midpoint, let me know what your secret little sleight of hand is, because I must be doing something wrong. Now, even though I snapped a midpoint here, or snapped in between 2 points is what I actually did, I still have one singular line right here. And since I'm going to close my bust dart and open it back up here in the middle of the shoulder so that I can see how well my side seam is trued up, I need this to be in two different lines instead of one continuous line. So I'm going to break it. BR. That's the scissors command, or in my mind, I think of the word break, BR. And I click on the line, left mouse, left click, and then I'm going to snap to the construction point, and I'm going to snap to the construction point again because I want the line to stop and start in between the construction point. So now I'm going to draw a line from my bust point using LI, and again, just keep an eye on what's going on here. And I'm going to right click, drag it up here, and I'm going to right click again. Ah, that gave us a nice thick line here. Looks like my defaults are pretty thick there, but I don't think anybody will complain about that, so you can see it nice and clearly. Now, I know we can do a dart transfer. So that's one way of going about closing this dart and opening it back up here. I tend to use closing this and rotating this piece here. The reason why that's more intuitive for me is I spent many years doing pattern making by hand, literally cutting this with a pair of scissors, slashing this line with a pair of scissors, and literally on paper rotating this piece here. And that visualization and that physical activity of cutting and moving and pivoting helped me grasp pattern making much better. So if you're new to doing pattern making by computer, I would suggest mimicking paper, scissors, and pencil as much as you can at first, and then do the fancy bells and whistles such as true dart, true pleat, move dart point, slash and spread, dart transfer. Dart transfer will, in an automated way, transfer the dart location for you, but unless you are already savvy and used to the actual spatial concept, I would avoid using those for now, but I don't mind showing you both of those right now. I'll just need to do a copy and paste, CO, apply, and move that over. So let's do it the old-fashioned way first, the way we do with pencil and paper. First, I'm going to highlight the section that I want to move. So in this case, I'm wanting to highlight this piece over here, and I'm going to want to rotate it to where this dart leg in an imaginary way sews together and closes here, and my dart is opened up over here. The easiest way to do this is going to be to hold down my left mouse button and drag a box around the section. So that all worked nice and nifty. All of it was highlighted. But let's say there were other lines in the way. Let's say I accidentally had the rest of this leg here highlighted. What I would do is simply hold down my shift button and unhighlight it. So in order to rotate this, I'm going to use my align button. I'm going to be aligning 2 points. So that is A as in apple, L as in love. So I'm going to click or snap to the first point on the selected object. In this case, I'm going to right click to grab my bust point. Second point, right click. So I want to take those 2 points of the highlighted selection and align here and here. Now, if you don't see anything happen at first, sometimes you need to shake up the screen a little bit, and I'm just moving my mouse cursor to kind of wake it up. So sometimes when you do an operation in the pattern editor, the screen might still look as if you've done nothing, but you really did. So I'm going to draw a line now from here to here. And so what I've done in a pencil and paper way is I've moved my dart from the side, and I've moved it over to the shoulder. Now sometimes when I've done automated patterns from the pattern editor, sometimes my side seam would not be trued up. Sometimes the dart legs would stick out a little too much. But in this case, you can see it snaps perfectly straight, from the underarm to the waist, so we're happy with that. Now I'm going to put it back and move my dart point over, because I mentioned being an inch close to the actual apex was a little too close for me. So again, pretty easy. Highlight, A, L. I'm aligning this point and this point to this point and that point. Nothing happened, move my cursor, and it puts it in place. And I draw my other leg here from point to point, and we're back where we started. Now I'm going to do dart transfer. So it's going to be a little more automated, which is completely fine. You're going to find your favorite way of doing various tasks. So dart transfer, tools, design, dart transfer, click or snap to the point for the new dart opening. Our new dart opening is going to be here at the shoulder. Right click, snap. Snap to the dart point, which we already established here. Snap. Snap to the end of one dart leg. Snap. Snap to the end of the other dart leg. Snap. Now I'm going to do that selection again. I'm going to drag my mouse around this guy here, and I'm going to click apply. Percent to transfer. This is where it can get actually pretty handy, in a more sophisticated way than with pencil and paper, because maybe I do want to end up with two darts where half of the dart intake is going to be in the shoulder and half of it would be at the bust. But in this case, I want to move the whole thing, so I'm going to click 100%. I want to go counterclockwise, and I'm going to click apply. Ta-da! Now, for me, and I tend to like to go the path of the fewest clicks possible. And really, if you think that's think of it, it's kind of lackadaisical, because the difference between doing 4 clicks versus 2 clicks, is a little petty. But for me, doing the align, if I'm rotating a dart 100%, align, snap, 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 snap is faster for me than it is going to design and doing the dart transfer and going through the dialog boxes. But you'll find whichever way works best for you. Now we are, let me open that back up. Or actually, I'll just cut and paste this one, because what I want to show you next is 2 methods for moving the actual dart point. And I don't need this guy anymore, so I'm going to take this, copy. And when you're working in Pattern Editor, I encourage making copies of each step in case you ever need to go back. All right, I think I'm going to need a center dart line, a center line right here in the middle of the dart to actually move the dart point. I'm not sure in Patternmaster, so let's take a look. So we're going to design, move dart point, click on the center line of the dart. Guess what? I don't have a center line of the dart, because in a roundabout way, let's say I created this dart myself and it does not have a center line. So there's a couple of ways that I'm going to create a center line. I do like True Dart very much as a quick shortcut to get me a center line. So I'm going to show you that way, and I'm going to show you a second way if you don't want to mess with True Dart, if you just want to get a line straight in the middle. The more you use workarounds to use the different tools to accomplish the same thing, the more intuitive the whole program will be for you, and you'll find what seems to work best for you. So I'm going to copy this guy again, because I'm going to show 2 methods of getting a center line of the dart. In this one, I'm going to draw a line here so I have a visual, and I'm going to S2, snap 2 points, And then I'm going to draw a line from this point to the center. And now I have my centered line of the dart. Now I can also do a true dart function and also get a center line. So that will be in Design, True Dart. Click on the line or arc that the dart folds into. I like my darts to fold downward with gravity, so that would be down this way. So I'm going to click on the line that it folds into, which is this line here. Snap to the dart end attached to the previous line. Right click is snap, snap to the dart point, snap, snap to the end of the second dart leg, snap. So that automatically brought out my legs so that when this is actually seamed together, it would fold neatly into the side seam. Things change a little bit though when you move your dart point. You often will have more of a severe angle needed to true up into whatever edge that you're folding into. So that's something that we'll want to keep an eye on as well. So my purpose for these two methods was simply to get a center line on my dart. This one trued out the edge, which I may or may not need at this point. And this one was a straight line. Right now, neither of that matters because I was just looking for the center line. So now I want to move my dart point. So we know the apex point is here. And let's say I want to be a full 2 inches away from the bust point. So what I'm going to do now in my roundabout way is I'm going to click on the center line here, and I'm going to locate a point, which is LP, and I'm going to snap to the dart line there, from the edge of the bust point there, sorry. And my locate points window pops up, and I'm going to go 2 inches away, click apply, and I have a dart point. So, I'm sorry, I have a construction point. So now I'm going to draw a line from here to here, and from here to here. And I don't need these dart legs any longer. Now watch what could possibly happen to the depth of my angle now that I have a shorter dart distance compared to the longer dart that we had here. So I'm going to do true dart again just so that we can do a little comparison here and see what actually happens to the dart here. Actually, while we're on the subject of darts and truing up darts, I've seen a couple of posts on Pattern Review related to the lower skirt darts, and this has happened to me quite a bit before when I'm doing muslins and whatnot. But oftentimes when I sew up a garment and I sew up the dart, sometimes I end up with kind of a little hole of a pocket dimple kind of crazy thing. And it's almost as if it keeps asking to be pinned lower and lower and lower to pinch out that little funky fold that's at the bottom of the dart. And for the longest time, it just really drove me crazy on how to get rid of it. And oftentimes the problem is I might have been just quickly sewing up the muslin, and my dart legs, as they fold into off to one side or the other, it wasn't actually trued up at the top edge. So if I sewed it into a waistband straight, it would kind of pull and hike up on the leg and create a dimple. Or it can go the other extreme where the dart ends are being pushed downward and it juts out in a pokey kind of way. So as time went by, I've really realized that your dart edges being trued up to where they're caught and folded into an adjoining seam really makes a dramatic difference. So I'm going to true the dart now. Isn't it interesting how the darts actually look very different based on their actual depth and size? In any event, design, true dart, and we know this by heart pretty much now. Click on the line, snap on the dart leg, snap to the dart point, snap to the dart edge. Now if you look here, you can see that the longer dart needed a more shallow fold going into this side seam. The shorter dart here needed a deeper angle going into the side seam. So I think part of why subconsciously I might enjoy my more hands-on approach to working a dart once I've moved it, once I've moved the dart point, then truing up the dart, is because if my dart is trued up to begin with and I move this dart point over, I'm not going to have the necessary angle anymore to true up into the side seam, and strange things can happen with the appearance of the dart once it's sewn up. Strange things with the appearance, with the fit. So the step I would encourage, and usually always encourage, is working with your pattern as nakedly as possible, meaning no seam allowances, nothing trued up. Get it to the shape that you need, then add your seam allowances, true things up, and you'll get better results. Something so tiny like this could cause you hours of scratching your head, wondering why something is having such an odd fit or an odd hang to it. So that's our little sidetrack there on the darts. So now that I got that dart out of the way, I am going to go to playing around with the sleeves now. And working with this, either of these is fine on the sleeve. So I'm just going to copy and paste any of them. CO, CO. Now I'm just going to work with the front of the sleeve today to show you a few of the different ways that this sleeve can be modified into what I call a fake raglan sleeve. We've seen the raglan sleeves that lower the armhole so it's a little baggier under the armhole, and then it appears to have a seam snapped in it that's a little humpy here for a one-piece raglan. And to get a more fitted raglan, an overarm seam is more ideal. Once you start getting into the one-piece raglan that is your front bodice, your back bodice, and your sleeve is still in one piece, you usually need to have a baggier fit that's more along the lines of an oversized sweatshirt. But for this example, I want the fit of a fitted sleeve, but I want the styling of a raglan. So that's what I'm going to address for this example now. But there's some other things I'm going to play with as well. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is ungroup the sleeve. Now we can see that the notches here, I'm going to turn off my construction points because it makes it hard to see sometimes. Let's get rid of the verbiage. We don't need the grain line there. So we have the notch here that signifies the center. So I'm going to snap to that notch, and I'm going to go straight down, and I'm clicking on my left mouse button to release that line. Now I'm going to intersect this line to this line. I chose IN for intersect and clicked on the two lines that I wanted to intersect. So I know this is already broken because this is the front of the sleeve. That's where the notch was, but the bottom is not broken here. So BR for break, click on the line, snap to the point, snap to the point again. So click, snap, snap. So I just want to work with the front, so I'm going to take the back. I want to get rid of it altogether, so let me copy it first. I'm going to move it over. And now I'm going to get rid of the back sleeve for this guy. And I'm hitting Control Save so that I don't lose my place. Now, I'm going to get to know my sleeve and my armhole just a little bit first. So I'm going to group my sleeve again. And that's Control G. I've highlighted it. And I want to attach it at the shoulder. There should be 3/8 of an inch, give or take, of ease, because that's what I chose in the Style Editor settings. So I'm going to do Align, AL, Snap, Snap. You can snap on the same point twice to align two pieces together. So I snapped twice because it's expecting two locations to be selected when you are going to align two pieces together. And now I'm going to snap, snap to the shoulder edge, right click, right click. And again, you kind of have to move your mouse cursor a little bit to kind of wake up the screen a little there. So that's at the tip here. Now I want to rotate and kind of examine how the two shapes are fitting together for this particular draft. Because remember, not all drafts are going to be the same. So in playing around with this, you can see that we have a long curvy shape to our sleeve in this particular draft, and we have a shorter severe curve on this one. Sometimes I play around and I'll align my underarm seams together to create a raglan, but I guess this is a good example, this automated pattern. In my custom drafted patterns, my armhole is not usually so short and deep and curved, the armhole depth, if you will, compared to my sleeve. But this will be a good example because it's going to be a worst case scenario. So in this instance, I just want to check just for a minute to see how it's trued up here. And I'm aligning the notch indicator here, and I'm going to rotate again. And I've aligned this together here, and see where it starts veering away? That's where I'm going to rotate again. So I'm going to highlight my sleeve, RO for rotate, move my cursor right at the beginning where it veers away, and I'm going to pivot it just as long as it continues lining up. Now you can also do some measuring if you like. If I ungroup this sleeve, I can measure the literal line difference of the sleeve cap and measure the literal line of from the top of the shoulder to the notch right here. But in this case, I want to walk it. The term is walking the sleeve or walking the seam, so that you can kind of become familiar with doing this on screen, because it might be very similar to what you're going to do by hand with pencil and paper. So I'm highlighting again, RO for rotate, and I'm going to click, and I'm just pretending that I'm sewing. Rotate again, click where they separate, and that overlaps a little bit right there, but I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. So this probably is 3/8. I'm going to measure it, MS, from here to here, and it's 0.317. Actually, in the Style Editor settings, I chose 0.3 for the ease, and that 0.3 ends up being 0.3 ease for the front sleeve, 0.3 in ease for the back sleeve, 1/3 of an inch, and that's fine. But since that's ease and my raglan may not need that, I'm going to cheat for a second or give myself a little marker, and I'm going to draw a line from here to here into the sleeve. And we know my sleeve is grouped, but I do this a lot, and Lisa knows I have a bad habit of this. I group on top of grouping on top of grouping until I get lost in a big black hole of grouping. But it helps me when I'm wanting to make marks and think out style lines. So I have my sleeve grouped. I'm holding down the Shift key, and now I'm going to select my little marker that shows this is my location of my sleeve cap if it has 0 ease compared to the cap line, seam line of the actual armhole. So now that I have both of these highlighted, I'm going to hit Control Group again. I'm so greedy with that. So now my whole thing is grouped here. So the sleeve I'm going to do for now is going to show that I want a fitted armhole for both the sleeve and for the actual armhole of the bodice. But right about in here, I want to draw in a raglan seam line, and I want to join it to the sleeve head of the front sleeve here. Now, for my taste, I'm going to end up ungrouping here in just a minute or drawing another line on my sleeve, but for my taste, the notch location for the arm's eye is really high up on the shoulder. So I'm going to bring that down about an inch. If I literally measure the arm's eye of the bodice, and again, this is a pattern that was automated in the style editor. And as I've always said, I'm not always fond of jumping off a cliff and using a style from style editor literally. I like using it as a starting point and use whatever skill level that you're at to fine-tune your pattern before you sew up your muslin and work in more style lines. So if I measure this arm's eye right now, the full location of it, it's 5 1/8 inches. So that's a little too much for me. So I'm going to back it off an inch. Usually I like 3, 3.5. Let's go with that. Let's go with 3.5. I have my arc selected, and let's move it down 2 inches. I'm going to LP, locate point. And I love locate point because it will work on a line and it will also work on an arc. But just keep in mind, it will only work effectively on a continuous line or a continuous arc. If this arc was already broken into 2 or more segments, it's only going to measure from the end point to however far out your end of your segment is. So try to have as much of a continuous line or arc when you're using locate point if you think that it's going to need to surpass that construction point. So in this case, it's one continuous piece. So locate point works effectively from the one arc right here, and I'm already defaulted to 2 inches, so that's good. I'm going to click apply. And I know I have that lovely little construction point there, but I get kind of wild and I like to snap a big line there so that I can visually see it a little stronger. And now I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that guy because it's kind of in my way. Now this is one continuous arc. I want to break it, BR, click, snap, snap. So now it's in 2 points. So I need to do the same thing for this, for the sleeve. From this notch, I need to locate a point 2 inches down from the notch, and I'm all grouped together. Now, since I'm a hog and I like to group and group and group, I'm going to have to ungroup and backtrack just as many times. So I have this all highlighted, and I'm going to hit Control U for ungroup. And believe it or not, it only ungrouped the last thing that I grouped, which in this case was the actual little line right here. So my whole sleeve is still actually grouped together. So I have to ungroup again. So now the whole thing is ungrouped. And this is very interesting. This is a good example. Now, it just so happened on our armhole, the end of the arc and the arm's eye and the notch indicator just happened to be on a separation between the arc and this next curve that goes into it. Now, if you look here, in this case, it's not happening that way on the sleeve. When I have my notch indicator here that was auto-generated in Style Editor, it actually doesn't happen to land at a segment separation. So let's go ahead and take care of that order of business first. BR for break, left click, and there's really not a construction point this time for me to snap onto with the right click. The only thing I have is the visual location of the middle of the X. So I'm going to left click and left click again. So it's not always going to be, when you're breaking a line or arc, left click to select it and snap, snap. The snap, snap with your right mouse button only comes in handy if you actually had a construction point to grab onto. So that's why left click was necessary for this particular one. And technically it might be some little minuscule amount of a fraction of an inch away from the actual notch point, but it's close enough there. So now I can do my locate point, LP, right click to grab onto that. I'm still defaulted to 2 inches, and I click apply. And that's way down here. Now, this little circle guy is to indicate having some ease applied to the actual curve of the underarm of the sleeve. And I didn't see in Style Editor any sort of a default for the amount of ease go in the underarm of the sleeve going into the arm side of the actual armhole, but I'm curious to find out actually. So I'm going to draw a line to my new my new notch point. I'm going to get rid of that little guy. I don't need it anymore. And I'm going to break this here. And all of these breaks and these visual locations of where the notches are going to line up becomes very handy when you're going to start merging sleeve pieces to bodice pieces and playing with raglan style seaming and other things. So now my big question here is, I'm curious now with our little circle indicator here that shows there's going to be some ease action. I'm curious what this is here compared to what this is here, because I might not need that for my raglan sleeve. Let me get rid of that circle. And I'm going to hold down my shift button and measure these two here. I get 3.136, about 3 1/8 inches. And I just am curious. I'm going to measure it here. And it's also 3 1/8 inch. So the little indicator for the circle to ease something into something else, none of that happened to matter in this particular one, which is actually fine for what I'm going to be demonstrating. So now I know my little cheater location for the amount of ease that I have at the cap of the sleeve, but the rest of this should true up just fine with the rest of the bodice. So I'm going to copy and paste here, CO, and move on to the next step. I'm going to get rid of where I previously played with my shoulder seam. So on this particular draft, what I am looking to do is I want to draw an interesting curvy raglan shape, but at the end of all this, I still want to keep my same underarm seam, and I still want to keep the fitted feel of my sleeve shape. I just want the styling of the raglan and keep it all where it would be if it was a fitted sleeve. So first I'm going to draw my style line. And I'm going to use my arc button, my arc command, AR, snap. There just happened to be a construction point there, which works out fine. And I'm going to go a little more than midway. You'll play with style lines that work best for you. And I'm going to do an outward curve here. And then I'm going to kind of S-blend it right to the arm side location here. I'm going to do arc again, snap, snap, and there we are there. Now, sometimes you might need more than 2 arcs to get the exact shape that you want. In this case, I just happened to get lucky. And I'm going to draw a notch going through this seam, because this is going to become an actual seam. So I'm going to give myself a reference notch here so that I know where I was, because I'm going to separate these and we want them to sew evenly back together. And it's a continuous line crossing through my arc. So I want to break my arc and I want to break my notch just so that I have them handy. So that's our BR. Click on this and click, click. So now my notch is in 2 different locations. Actually, I may not need a break there, but if I need that in the future, then we know where to do that. So nothing's going to really change to my sleeve underarm, and nothing's going to change in my bodice underarm. I'm going to group this guy together. So what's going to change, I'm just going to kiss those together. What's going to change is from this notch up. And I'm just doing a visual here. I don't need to perfectly align them together at this point. Now, one trick or one kind of lackadaisical way that I do it is I do rotate and overlap them together. And I could separate this and join the sleeve together. But then you see here that the caps are not lining up anymore. There's an overlap that happens right here. And one way to address that is I can measure it, and then I can compensate for that deficit by moving part of the deficit that's here to the actual outer edge of the sleeve. And I can add part of this deficit to the style line right here. And first we need to measure and see what the deficit actually is. And at its fullest point, right here, I'm going to measure MS. You're kind of in my way box. Left click, left click. I'm guessing about an inch. Not bad. So it's about 5/8 of an inch, and I can completely live with that. That's an easy one. So with that 5/8 of an inch, I'm going to do 3/8 of an inch in the hump of the shoulder edge here. 3/8 is usually a good amount, and then that only leaves 1/4 of an inch that I'm going to steal and add to the shaping here. So let me cut and paste to show that in action. Come on. Or copy and paste, rather. All right, and I'm going to do another cheater grouping thing to show me a line. What I'm doing now is I'm drawing a line here just to remind me where the fullness of my overlap was that I need to compensate for. So I've got all this grouped together. I'm holding down my shift key and I'm highlighting my little marker line there and I'm grouping it. And the parallel to that right here is going to be kind of in this location here. I don't need to group it, but I'm just giving myself a reminder line here that in this location, that's where my extra 1/4 of an inch is going to be located. So right now I'm going to go ahead and separate my sleeve. I know that my arm's eye notches are lined up and they are trued up. And now I'm going to separate this piece right here. I'm going to see if I can just highlight all of it. And I'm going to copy it. And the reason why I'm copying it right now is because I want to retain this curvy line here for the bodice. So here's that little chunk that's going to attach here. And for the bodice location, I don't need the shoulder anymore. So it looks really funny here, but we're going to true that up here in just a minute because we're cheating and we're keeping a fitted underarm seam. So right now I'm going to marry these two together and add that extra that we needed for the deficit. So drag a box. Well, actually, I'm going to move you. We'll just do that. Going to copy. And I'm going to group this chunk just so that I can start feeling comfortable with attaching it together. So I grouped it, and now I am going to use my align feature because I know that I need this point right here to align perfectly to here. And I know this looks different than other raglan sleeves. Oops. I think I might have a glitch here. This is different than other raglan sleeves that you may have seen because it's a fake raglan sleeve. All right, so I've highlighted this grouped object. I think I was talking to Lisa about this the other day, that in our newer versions, once we get a little crazy with doing grouping on top of grouping, which maybe nobody else does except for me, the locations of construction points for aligning and measuring might get a little crazy. So let me see how that's working. I apologize for that. I'm used to using Cameo mostly. So I'm going to do align. I've got 2 grouped objects. One of those grouped objects is double grouped. So snap, snap, so far so good. It's not recognizing the construction point of this grouped object over here, and it's not happy. So I'm going to try to wing it. Let's see if I can get close enough here. Align, align. No. So it does not want to recognize the construction point of my notch marker here because I got very greedy and I double grouped this item here. So let's do a workaround. It seems like it's fine grabbing on to construction points if you've only grouped one set together. So I'm going to test that theory right now. Sorry, we're learning together here. So Control U for ungroup, Control U for ungroup again, and now I'm just going to group all of this right here once with my extra little cheater line. So Control G for group, and let's see if we get lucky here. So this is my little shoulder piece. A-L, snap, snap, snap. Oh, yay, yay, it did it. Okay, so it attached the point of the shoulder piece to exactly where I wanted it to go. So lesson learned, Katina needs to stop being so greedy with grouping and grouping and grouping. So now I'm going to rotate and Now, I could rotate till I'm kind of in the ballpark here, but I can just go ahead and align these two together. AL, snap, 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 shake up the screen. Didn't get exactly where I wanted it to, but it is close enough. Now, we do have a little extra room right here, which is okay. It's probably 1/8 of an inch if we measure it. Yeah, it's a little more than 1/8 of an inch. So now that I've joined these two together, I'm going to ungroup GX, or actually the new one is Control U. So I've ungrouped both of those together. I know in about this location I need 5/8 of an inch extra room. So I'm going to add 3/8 over here. And I'm going to split the difference between this little integrated shoulder yoke here and the bodice location here. And I'm going to get that extra 1/4 of an inch that I need for the sleeve fullness by doing 1/8 of an inch here and 1/8 of an inch here to the shaping. And I don't need that extra 1/8 of an inch here at the neckline or here at the arm's eye. I need it right through here in the shoulder line. So zooming in, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the lines that I don't need anymore. And remember, we still had that 0.3 of an inch extra ease right there, so I'm not too wildly concerned. I'm going to move these 2 points so they're touching each other. And now let's go for that 3/8 of an inch extra that we need. So I'm going to use the offset feature, and that's going to be OF, 3/8 of an inch, apply, and that gives me a marker here. And I'm going to use my arc tool, AR, and I'm going to hump this out just a little there. Actually, I need to move it more. So what I've done is I've added 3/8 of an inch of fullness for that overlap deficit that I had there. And now I need 1/8 of an inch extra over here. This is my actual notch line here. And this is just kind of my little marker reminder of where I really wanted to concentrate that extra fullness. So now I'm going to zoom in here. I'm going to offset OF, 1/8 of an inch, right through here. And I'm going to keep my neckline curve, and I'm going to start here at 0. And I'm going to curve it out here and blend it back to 0 at the armhole. So AR here, and I'm going to get about midway here. So there's my new line. And this offset, this whole offset of 1/8 of an inch is just to give me a guideline. So I'm going to arc again. And I want to end up at about 0 right back over here because I only need that little bit. So now I can get rid of these other lines. We're right about an hour here, so I'm going to speed things up a little bit. Oops, I should not have done that because I need that little connector there. So the OO button is to go back, OO. So put that back. So since that is a continuous line and my new line stopped here, I'm going to break from here to here. Now I don't need that straggler. I don't need you anymore. I don't need you anymore. I'm going to break this. Now, I'm okay with this here, the underarm seam, because I know how that's going to stitch nicely together to fit into the new seam line of the front of the bodice here. But this is a little too severe for me right here. So I'm going to move it out just a little bit. I want to see what happens if I move it out just 1/8 of an inch as another curve. So I just did this 1/8 of an inch just to kind of give me a marker. And I'm going to smooth it out with, so see, that's very subtle. That little 1/8 of an inch is not going to hurt anything. So now I'm going to have a smoother overarm seam here. And I'm going to break. And what do we have here? So that swoops there. So I need to break it right here. And I'm getting rid of this guy and that guy. So now we have probably the shape of a raglan seam that you've never ever seen, I don't know. And the only thing left to do is add that extra 1/8 of an inch that I needed here. And guess what? That actually comes in very handy because I don't particularly need this or care for this severe shape here that crashes into the arm side point. So I'm just going to blend it. I'm going to go OF and 1/8 of an inch. And I'm just going to take it. I'm just going to move this point. How am I going to do this? First I'm going to get rid of this guy because I don't need it. I'm going to pull this out to here for my 1/8 of an inch. I need my construction point CP. Actually, my construction point's way over there. MP. So I'm going to move that guy out there. Move this here. Basically, I'm just trying to smooth this out a little bit so it's not so severe. So I ended up compensating for that overlap that was here when we joined these two segments together, which was the 5/8 inch deficit, 3/8 inch here, 1/8 of an inch here, and 1/8 of an inch here. I could probably even smooth this guy out just a little bit more. Of course, we're going to do a muslin maca. So now this overarm sleeve will join to this raglan shape of this bodice. You would repeat the same thing for the back, but you would probably give even more room to the back raglan sleeve area to accommodate for the movement of the shoulder blades, and this will all sew together. So that's what I have for today. I'm going to stop the screen share. I don't know if anybody was on question and answer. Okay, the question is, would darting the raglan cap reduce the underarm bagginess? So basically what we did, you're right, you could keep your one-piece sleeve and just dart the actual cap of the sleeve, and just like we did in the demonstration, keep your actual underarm of the sleeve and your arm's eye of the bodice exactly the same. So basically I did create a dart of sorts by humping this out to compensate for the overlap here. Now, if I were to still do the back sleeve, just the way I did my front sleeve, if I wanted to, I can, and I wanted to eliminate the center overarm seam, I could bring my front raglan seam, my front raglan sleeve, my back raglan sleeve, and I can butt them up together. And I tend to have more success when I'm sewing and shaping a raglan sleeve with a dart to do more of the contoured dart in the center instead of just the straight nipped dart. Works a little bit better for me. I always end up getting a strange little dimple when I try to do a super straight dart. And let's see, Shelly, were you able to get on? Oops, I don't want to screen share. Well, I know you guys are there. I see you, but I don't see anybody in the chat. But in any event, this is supposedly has recorded, so hopefully we got that part right. And even if you guys weren't able to make it today or you couldn't join in for lack of knowledge and technical difficulties at my end, at least you'll be able to see the recording. So that's all for now, unless anybody hops back onto question and answer for anything. But I think otherwise, that's it. Hope everybody has a good rest of their Sunday. Bye.